Before I start, it's my pleasure to welcome my Guru, Brahmasri Ramakrishna. I've been learning Veda from him for the last 10 years. He has been teaching many of us in South Bangalore Veda for the last 20 years. So a privilege to have you here, sir. Okay, so we will continue. We are in chapter 14. We just saw a few shlokas last class. Let me recollect again. There are three important issues in chapter 13 which we must remember. The entire last triplet of 6 chapters critically depend on that. 3 ideas I want to repeat it in every class until we finish chapter 18. The first idea is Prakriti and Purusha are anadi. That's what in shloka 19 you will find in chapter 13. Prakriti Purushas-chaiva vidhi anadi ubhavapi. That's how in chapter 19, shloka 19 in chapter 13. Then there are 2 following shlokas which are very, very important because the entire 6 chapters in Bhagavad Gita, the last 6 chapters, is because of these 2 shlokas. One is कार्य कारण कर्तृत्वे प्रकृतिः हेतुः उच्यते पुरुषः सुख दुःखानां भोक्तृत्वे हेतुः उच्यते. So we should remember this. The prerana is with Prakriti, the samarthya is with Purusha. The desire to do work comes from the Prakriti. The samarthya and the bhoktritva comes from the Purusha. So this issue was established in shloka 20. And then the 21st shloka is the most important shloka, where Shri Krishna says that Purusha residing in Prakriti, bhunkte prakritijan gunan, karanam guna sangaha asya, sad asad janmasu yonisu janmasu yoni, sad asad yoni janmasu. This is the most important reason which explains birth and death, janma and samsara. The Purusha, for some reason, decides to go along with Prakriti and consume and it gets glued. I have been using the word gum. The gum for sticking Purusha and Prakriti are the Trigunas. So the only way the Purusha can liberate itself from Prakriti is to dry this gum, called the Trigunas. That is why the entire 6 chapters are only about gunas. Because if the guna if we don't become Gunatita, then this Purusha and Prakriti can never, the Purusha will otherwise get stuck with Prakriti, which is what the shloka is saying. So that is the reason why we immediately have Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga. And then as I showed in the last class, you have Devasya Sampati, you have Shraddhadaya Vibhaga Yoga. In chapter 18, everywhere the Trigunas are described. So Sri Krishna has brought this whole idea of liberation and mumukshutva to a simple idea of managing this color palette called the Trigunas. If we know how to manage the Trigunas, we are on our path to mumukshutva. That is why the entire 3rd triplet of Bhagavad Gita is all about gunas. Because this gum must be dried. If the gum is not dried, this is a journey which will be an endless journey. Sat asad yonisu janmaha. That's what he says in that shloka. So therefore, that is why this whole idea about gunas. I was just thinking about a few things. See, let's take our daily life. Just think about our daily life. Every day, from the time we get up till we go to Sushupti, not Sopna, Sushupti, until then. Till we go to Sushupti, from the time we are in Jagrat, we behave in a variety of ways. A variety of things that happens every day if you think about it. Sometimes we are very thoughtful, very discerning, very enlightened. There are occasions in our daily life when there are moments of time when we feel very enlightened. We feel very happy, empowered, feeling a strong urge to help others. So there are a set of these things also happen to us. Today it happened to me perhaps, say, let's say 7 o'clock to 7:02. Then that thought is gone. Maybe it again comes some other times. All of us go through this. So this is one kind of our behavior, our thought process belong to this. Sometimes we are very much in a state of action. We are all in the thick of action. All the time we are very energetic. There are occasions like that. We go after results. We pursue deep desires that we have in our life. There are occasions, on a day-to-day basis we do it. We go after passion. We are envious, we are jealous. All these happens. So this is another stream of behavior that we all go through. Every day this happens. There are also times when we are very sober, we are actionless, we are very dull, very non-responding, sleepy, literally inert. So every one of us on a day-to-day basis, we go through these three mixtures. Right? We always go through these three mixtures all the time. And these come several times in a day, in several combinations. We have never thought about it. We have never stood apart from this and asked what is going behind all this. This chapter is about that. Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga gives us a science to understand this. Gives us a mechanism by which we can make sense of what is going on. So that's what Sri Krishna is doing in this chapter. So Sri Krishna is presenting a conceptual framework. How do you understand what do you go through in terms of your behavior, in terms of your feelings, in terms of certain thought processes and so on. He has presented a very nice framework. And he uses this to point to several things that happens in our life. Today we will see in quick succession. He is telling us what these things will do here and hereafter. Iha and Amutra. What will happen? What will happen at the time of death if you have a certain thought process, what will happen? Which means he is saying, what is your trajectory in this birth and death process? That also he is going to say. And what kind of fruits we will reap. So all these form part of this chapter, because if this guna is so fundamental with which Purusha is getting stuck with Prakriti, the first step in the process is to understand the science of guna. Understand there is something behind what is called guna. In casual terms we talk about sattva, rajas and tamas, but we need a proper understanding of it. That is what this chapter is all about. So it gives us, so Sri Krishna gives us a trajectory from birth to death, from one janma to another janma. We will see those shlokas. So that is how this chapter is organized. We simply saw this definition of sattva, rajas and tamas be extensively quoted from Viveka Chudamani, because there are very nice shlokas there where Adi Shankaracharya brings a different perspective of explaining what is tamas, rajas and sattva. We will quickly see. So last class we saw so much quickly. First 5 shlokas, we saw shloka 6 and 7, where the definition of sattva, rajas and tamas was there. Then we moved on to Viveka Chudamani, so we stopped there. This class we will continue with this and hopefully we will try to finish it. To summarize what we saw last class, I just wanted to bring it. Shankaracharya says that there are these 3 Shaktis, Vikshepa Shakti, Avarana Shakti and Jnana Shakti. And as I was explaining in the last class, this Avarana Shakti is the most complicated. See, a rope, we took the example of the rope and the snake. If somebody has to see a snake in the rope, there are 2 conditions to be fulfilled. The first condition is all properties of rope must be blocked. Even if there is the smallest possibility of seeing a rope, the question of snake will never arise. That is called Avarana. First you have to block it. The Adhisthana must be completely blocked. Once you have blocked it, now you have scope for putting many things on the top of it. So if you block this property of rope, then many rope-like things can be mounted on it. Somebody may think it is a coil of wire. If he is an electrician, he may think like that. Somebody may think it is a coil of snake. So that is Vikshepa. Kship is to throw. Vikshepa is wrongly mapping. So Adi Shankaracharya gave this definition. He says, and according to his definition, tamas is the most dangerous thing. Because you have to first block. Only when you block, you can get into Vikshepa. So according to all those shlokas that's why the number of shlokas he spent for Tamas were 6 shlokas. For Rajas 2 shlokas and Sattva 1 shloka in Vivekachudamani. That's all. Maximum number of descriptions is only about Tamas. Because if we are not able to address this, if you solve this, this will be solved. Because this is a function of this. That is why we have this Avarana Shakti which is coming out of Tamas. And the shlokas gave all this understanding which we saw last class. Because we said Rajas is Karma Sanginaha. This is Sukha and Jnana Sanginaha. Sattva. And this is Pramada, Alasya and all those. Nidra, Vihi, all those. That's what we saw. And this is where we stopped last class. So with this basic understanding of Sattva, Rajas and Tamas, and particularly understanding the most disturbing part is Tamas. In fact, as we see, Devasura Sampath and Shraddhatraya Vibhaga and even chapter 18, there is one picture which will come very clearly. At one level, Sattva and Tamas will look very similar. Because, one is ignorance, one is... See, if it is pitch dark, that's why I gave the example. If there is a rope in a room, there are 3 possibilities. The room is pitch dark. The room is well lit. In both the cases, from one perspective, there is no effect on the observer. In one case, it is complete ignorance. He may be actually stepping on a snake, not even knowing there is a snake. That is, so Tamas and Sattva description, if you carefully look at it, sometimes they look very similar. You have to understand the difference is the level of ignorance or intelligence. Otherwise, both of them try to nullify all differences. One out of ignorance, one out of understanding. So I want you to keep this in mind because you will see that the definitions will come very closer. Actually, Tamas and Sattva. But one operates from complete ignorance, one operates from complete knowledge. That is the difference. So this room which is not lit properly is the source of more complications. If it is fully lit, we know it is snake or rope and we will do the needful. If it is not lit in both the cases, in case where it is completely lit and case where it is completely dark, we don't have a problem. One is out of ignorance, another is out of knowledge. But we don't have a problem in both the cases at the outset. That's why they will look very similar. So we'll go on with a few more shlokas. So what was described in the previous 3 shlokas, in a way Sri Krishna concludes here. Sattvam sukhe sanjayati, rajaha karmani bharata, jnanamavritya tu tamaha, pramade sanjayati uta. So he says, these are very nice. People ask, how do you know Rajas, Tamas and Sattva? The examples I gave with which I started. Sometimes we feel very happy, we feel helping others, we feel very enlightened. All those are the only ways we can recognize. Because Vivekachudamani says, this Maya and the Gunas, you know only by the effect. That's what Shankaracharya says. You know it only by the effect. Until then you do not know. So I think we say when there is a feeling of goodness, when there is a feeling of an evolved state, goodness, good things, heart is very cool, that is the Sattva Bhava. Now I gave this example when I did a detailed description of this shloka. I remember it, let me tell you. One day I was going from here to attend a meeting. Somewhere in the city, there was some meeting. So I left in my car. In Jayanagar I was crossing 38th cross and 9th main, that 10th main. That junction I was crossing. I was actually I must be late by a few minutes. Actually I found there was an elderly gentleman who was really struggling with the address. I could guess that much. So I parked the car. And then I stepped out of the car and I asked him, what is it? Because nobody was looking at him and he was trying to ask. So I stopped the car. I got out of the car and I asked him, what is it? He said, where is this address? I knew the address. That day, I don't know, and the address is on this side, towards the Managada road. Little bit on 27th May, 8th May, this side. Beyond that Ahmad Bazaar and all that. I am that side. I don't know what happened that day. I told him, you get into the car, I will drop you at your place and go. I mean, I don't know why I did that day. But the point is, I was delayed by another 10 minutes for the meeting. But when I went to the meeting and when I came back, there was a feeling of, my heart was, there was coolness in my heart. That is called that is an expression of little sattva. See, I could have always told him, this is the way to go, and I could have done, which I would have done on many other days. It so happened that day I felt like, I thought he is quite elderly, I don't want him to get a little agitated by this traffic. I took him, and so all of us have such examples in all our lives. I can only tell my examples, unfortunately. Those are the times when your heart is very cool. Just like there is an air conditioner running in your heart. That is the definition here. Sattvam sukhe sanjayati. That is what, those are the aspects of sattvic behavior. A sattvic behavior invariably leaves you that trail of feeling, that trail of experience, and all that is what we need to understand. Rajaha karmani bharata. All that which puts you into the thick of work, looking for results, all that which I said, they are all coming also. That is how we have to recognize Raja. So without Rajas, this world of Vyavahara will not work. Pure sattva is not really much use. With pure gold you cannot do anything. You have to add a little copper to it. Otherwise this gold you can put it in a 24 karat, maybe keep it in the bank and say I have a gold biscuit. If you want to put it into Vyavahara, you have to add some impurity to it. So the sattva needs a bit of impurity called Raja to be in the world of Vyavahara. So that is what is being conveyed here. So proportion and all we will see. As you go along, he is talking about the proportions and so on. Jnanam avritya, so this avarana shakti is what this tamas is all about. It really, in fact, I remember a parable of Ramakrishna, I must share it here. This is a very nice parable from Ramakrishna. So there was a forest, and in the thick of the forest, 3 thieves caught hold of a person. And so the person carried valuables and so on. The first thief said that we will finish him off. So that was the recommendation of the first thief, because we'll take off all his belongings and then we'll kill him. So the second thief said, looked at it, he said, no, let us not do like that. We will tie him, we will take all his belongings and we'll tie him on a tree and then go away. So finally that is what they agreed to. They tied this person in the tree, took all his belongings and then went away. The third thief came back. After the 3 went, the third thief came back. He untied him, he told him, I am very sorry, we have inflicted so much damage on you. I will tell you how to get out of this place to your town. He led him out. As he came near the town, he said, this is where you have to go, you go. So this gentleman said, you have been so nice to me, why don't you come? He said, I am a thief, I cannot come. Police will catch me, so I will go away. So the first thief, Ramakrishna says, this is example he gives for Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. The first thief is Tamas, because there is no use of the thinking faculty at all. You don't have to kill him. Your job is to tie him and then go away. That's what he says. Jnanam avrityatu tamaha. It engulfs everything. The power of thinking is at its zero. So Ramasha Paramahansa says the first thief is a representation of Tamas. The second thief is the representation of Rajas. Because he gets the work done, he knows how to do things, and there is a certain amount of thinking with which he operates. The third thief is actually Sattva. If Ramasha Paramahansa further goes and says, still they are thieves. In Shloka 20 to 27 in this chapter, we need this parable. Because Sri Krishna says, he gives a 2-part recommendation. We'll come to it at that time, we'll remember this Shloka again, this parable again. Because at the end of the day, all the 3 are thieves. But there is a sattvic thief and there is a rajasic and a tamasic thief. So that is how these 3 gunas actually exhibit in terms of what it happens to us. This is a very, very important principle. I call it as law of guna dominance. I use all these scientific terms and all that I teach. I call it as law of guna dominance because we have to understand this. See, every one of us has this color palette RGB as the computer gives us. So as I told you, sometimes Rajas throws out, sometimes sattvic behavior is exhibited, Sometimes tamasic behavior is exhibited. Notwithstanding all of that, at the end of the day, every Vyakti will exhibit one guna which is, suppose let's say from morning to evening there are 1,000 responses that has happened today. Suppose if I keep a log book and use this principle and find out how many of these 1,000 are Rajas, Tamas and Sattva, suppose I maintain a log, you will find that there will be one which will be majority than the other two. That is our makeup now. That is our guna makeup now. That's what. So that is what the shloka Krishna is saying, that although the three gunas exist, at any point in time there will be a guna which will be dominant. So that's what he says, and it can be any of the three. He says, Rajas Tamas cha abhibhuya, by overpowering Rajas and Tamas, Sattvam bhavati bharata. So a person whom we call as Sattvic, what does it mean? It means he also has Rajas, he also has Tamas. But the proportion is, if you look at it, the dominant proportion is Sattvic. That's why we call him Sattvic. So that is what I call as law of guna dominance. This is very important because only because this exists, there is now a scope for adjusting the proportion. We have to adjust the proportion, which is Krishna is going to say later. But the point he is making is every Vyakti is made of three gunas, but there is one guna which will be dominant in that Vyakti. For some, it will be Rajas and Tamas will be overpowered by Sattva. We may call such people as Sattvic. For some people, the Raja will overpower Sattva and Tama. Rajaha Sattvam Tamas Chaiva. Sometimes the Tamas will overpower Sattvam and Rajas. So which means every one of us, although we have all the three gunas, there is one guna which is very dominant, which is our current state of frequent behavior and responses. We can understand it like that. And this is very important for us to know, because here lies the hope of changing this proportion. And Krishna argues why changing this proportion is a very, very important. Last 7 shlokas in this chapter, we will only see that argument.
How far is time relevant for it? In some period of time you might exhibit one. In some period...
No, that's what I am saying. If there is a way by which, that's why I said from the time the Jagrat to Sushupti, we keep behaving all the time. And whatever we behave, if there is a way we can maintain a log, I mean it is very difficult, but you can guess, you have to become conscious of it. See, the improvement happens only when we become conscious of it. All that, what are we trying to say here? That if you become conscious of it, you will actually recognize you have a dominance of Sattvic guna, or you have dominance of Rajas, or you have dominance of Tamas. You please understand it as the first step. Otherwise there is no hope in changing. See, in management parlance, they say nothing is improved if it is not measured. This is a very fundamental principle in management. If you have to improve something, you have to measure. Without measuring, nothing will be improved. In the same way, this shloka tells us, become a little reflective, understand. You see, what is your behavior? You will slowly find that this is my nature. Sarvadvareshu dehe asmin prakasha upajayate jnanam yada tada vidya vivruddham sattvam iti uta. So this is the experience I narrated. When you engage in any sattvic activity, you will feel very light. You will feel very good. You will feel very enlightened. That's a very small example I gave, that I did something on that day. Because I wanted to give that small example to tell, it is very easy to understand and we have to look for it. So that's why Sri Krishna says, Sarvadvareshu dehe sarvadvareshu asmin dehe sarvadvareshu prakasha upajayate. So prakasha upajayate is not as they show in a movie, some light is suddenly coming. What it indicates is you feel enlightened. See, the word prakasha, light, is always used with enlightenment. We feel much larger than what we are, in the sense of, feeling much more influencing a wider, feeling much good of what we have done. Those are all the meaning we have to take out of it. So when that kind of a thing happens, when you always get superior knowledge and understanding of anything, it happens only because of sattvic property. Whether it is a loka jnanam or whether it is a jnana for mumukshutva, the domain of jnana belongs to sattva. So people who have this urge, we saw it already as a definition. Sukha, Jnana are the one which binds Sattva is what he defined. So therefore, whenever there is this desire to know knowledge, acquire more knowledge, those are all the actually indicators that your sattvic property is improving. That's why he say, Jnanam yada tada vidya vivridam sattvam iti uta. That's what it is. Understand sattva to be like that. Because first of all, we should know there are 3 gunas. We should know what these 3 gunas are up to. We should know that there is one guna which can dominate all the other. Now he is telling how do you know which guna will do what. So that is where he is now taking the next step of discussion on Lobha, Pravrittihi Arambaha, Pravrittirarambaha, Karmanam Ashamaha and Spriha. So there are 4 conditions for Rajas. When such things happen, we must understand that is the effect of Rajas. One is Lobha, right? We have these feelings sometimes. They are all coming from the domain of Rajas. That's why it is very, very important to know the greed that we have. Pravritti Arambha, if we have to be in the world of Vyavahara, we need Rajas. That's why I told pure gold is not good for Vyavahara. It is good for keeping in a showcase or in a bank locker. You want to make ornaments, you have to impurify it with copper. 22 carat at least you must do. Depending upon how much you can afford, or at least 18 carat, if not 22. In the same way, if we have to, whenever we engage in action, what is triggering from us? That component of guna called Rajas.
Sir, so you were saying that a lot of saints which you meet are in the thick of activity and they work for around 20-22 hours and sleep for 2-3 hours. Are they also more of Rajas?
Okay.
Their action is more towards Tattva.
Okay, so the point is this Pravritti Arambaha, what for it is done, that is what the next 2 is doing. That is why at the end of chapter what we will see is, in fact in chapter 3 itself he said, Guna Guneshu Vartante iti matva dharen. That's what he said. So they are gone to that level. Again, Chinmayananda has a nice parable for it. He has a very nice parable. What he says is, let's say you are standing in a moving train. As long as you are in a moving train, it is moving. There is no other way. You may not be moving. You are part of the moving train. As long as you are part of the moving train, you are subjected to all these movement. Moment you alight out of the train, let the train move. Nothing will happen to you. So the gunas will exist because guna is part of Prakriti and this kshetra is nothing but Prakriti. So guna will be there. Whether the guna will interfere in such cases, guna may not interfere. Guna guneshu vartante. At the end of the chapter we will see the same. So that will be the difference. That the guna is not interfering. This loba, karmanam, ashamaha and spriha may not be there. That's why the next 2 are put there. So it is not just pravrittinam arambaha, it is also what for and what does that do? Shamata is not there. Karmanam, ashamaha and spriha. There is this desire to do. That is not the desire to do. That's why he says in chapter 3 again he said in 27 sloka, Ahankara vimudata kartaham iti mani. That's what he said, manyate. That's what he said. Prakriti, all those are described in chapter 3 itself. We are only coming back to it again. That would be the difference.
Is this relative terms of greed and activity now?
No, when you operate from a domain of Rajas, all of them are related. If you operate without the domain of Rajas, they may not be. That's why Mukta Sangha Samachara in chapter 3, in Karma Yoga, all these ideas have been said. Tasmat Karma Kaunteya, Mukta Sangha Samachara. So if you have Mukta Sangha, they are not related.
If you don't think what's in for me, you do these actions, then you move away from there more towards Sattva.
Exactly. These are all very well established in the Karma Yoga. So they are all getting connected here. So they are related when the Rajas is very active. You see in 37th shloka in chapter 3, when Arjuna asked, Anichyanapi Vashne Baladevan Yojitaha, for which Krishna said, Kama Yesha Krodha Yesha Rajoguna Samudbhavaha. That's what he said. Vidhi Vairinam is what Mahashna Mahapapma. It consumes everything. So as long as the Rajas is active, all these are connected. That's what this shloka is also saying. When all of them are connected, understand your Rajas is in a very unseasoned form rather than the seasoned form which you are raising. So that is what he is saying, lobha, pravrittirarambha, which is fine, but karmanam ashamaha and spriha, all these are indicators of as long as we are doing what there are occasions when we do. That means rajas is playing its full force. That is what it means. Then we say rajas etani jayante vivrude bharatashaba. So that is how you have to recognize rajas. Is what he is saying. Then the third effect is on tamas. So there he says aprakashaha, apravrittischa, pramade mohayevacha. This is like pitch dark room. You don't even know what is there. You freely step into everything and inflict damage on you. Because it is all avarana. It is completely, deluded. Moha, pramada. All these definitions are already there. In this chapter you will see it again coming. In Sloka 7 here you will see it again and you are seeing it here. Tamasyetani jayante duride kurunandana. So occasions where we are, that's why the first thief who said let us kill him is pramada. There is a misunderstanding of what is to be done. It may not be warranted. That particular action may not be warranted at all. It's just thoughtlessness, complete thoughtlessness and inertness is an example, is a manifestation of tamas. So he says you recognize for yourself. When you reacted to activities, when you reacted to situations, not only externally, even in thought process. In fact, it is only in our culture, we don't have to, violence need not be done, violence can be done in the mind also. So, Dhamma and Shama, both are there. It's not just Dhamma, it's Shama also. So all these, even if your thoughts, you can judge whether it is originating from a domain of Sattva, or Rajas, or Tamas. So that is what he is saying, and Sri Krishna is saying, Guna dominance will always happen. Then he talks about the last moments. In chapter 8, he talked about the last moments. We are returning to that idea again in chapter 14. Chapter 9 also a little bit, but chapter 8 we particularly started with that. End of chapter 7 and chapter 8, that's where we started. Yada sattve pravriddetu pralayam yati dehavrit tada uttama vidam lokan amalan pratipadyate. So Krishna says, what happens in the last moment? I was just reading Dayananda Saraswati's complete Bhagavad Gita home study. There is a 10-volume, very nice book. I was just reading this shloka. So he is giving an example. He says, if the person is very rajasic, all the rajasic means, lobha, what is in it for me, all those we already saw. So when I say rajasic, we have to connect all that. So he is very jovially writing in the book that a person in the 11th hour at the time of dying, if you utter Narayana, Narayana in his ears, he will think of Narayana here who owes him some 1,000 rupees. Not Narayana. He brought that point very correctly. Point is, what happens, but that's why in chapter 8 and I talked also, I said, I want to say this again, your life is a preparation for the death. Don't run away from death. Your life is a preparation for the last moment. And all that we do in the life, the last thought that will come to us, we are all talking without experiences, still we will have to talk. But logically, it makes a lot of sense. The last thought that will come when the jiva goes out of it is that which is very close to our heart. And if you are rajasic, you know what is close to your heart. Krishna has explained all that. That's why Dayananda Saraswati says, Narayana, you say he remembers of some Narayana who owes him something. Because that is what he is made of. So the point he is making, so it is not about last moment. The last moment happens only when a life long of changing ourselves. So the implication of this shloka is not about the last moment. It's about all the moments which led us to the last moment. It's very, very important. In fact, in Mukundamala he says, Prana prayana samaye kapavada pittaihi smaranam kutaste. He says, how do I remember you in the last minute? Because my faculties will be choked. That's what Kulshekhara says in Mukundamala. So I think the most important thing to understand, the last moment is a function of what you walked. What you walked in terms of your thoughts, your beliefs, your actions, your deeds, all of them will only take you to the last moment. So if the last moment, if you have to be sattvic, then there is a lifetime of preparation to be sattvic. If the last moment has to be Rajasic, that means you are Rajasic. So that is how we have to understand. He says, if you breathe in your final moments, if sattvic thoughts come in you, he says what will happen? Uttama Vidan Amalan Lokan. We will go to this pure Amalan, Uttama Vidan Lokan. That's where we will go. So he is now connecting, because our entire philosophy, which greatly differs from the Western thinking says one life. In fact, our entire philosophy is all about a continuous trajectory we are going. So this changeover from one point to another point is not an ordinary issue, it's a very serious issue. We have to understand that this connecting links are very, very important. He is talking about from one Janma to next Janma where we will go. There are some more shlokas which says the same thing in a great detail. So the point he is saying is, at the final moments, so what do we understand? At the final moments, only one of the three gunas will come, which is what is dominant in me. Because law of dominance I already said. So therefore, in the final moment, only one guna will overpower all the gunas. Because that is inherently dominant. So if it is sattvic, what will happen? If it is rajasic and tamasic, what will happen? The next shloka says. He says, rajasi pralayam gatva. If we breathe the last and we are very, rajasic in our thought, then we will be karma sangishu jayate. Because this rajas is all about, engaging in activity, what is in it for me, how do I increase my wealth, what can I do about this? These are all the domain on which rajas is. So that is where we will find the continuation in this linkage. Then third he says, tata pralinas tamasi muda yonishu jayate. So if the thought is tamasic, and the thought will be tamasic at the final moments only when our guna is dominantly tamasic. So if a guna is dominantly tamasic, at the final moment it will be tamasic. And if it is tamasic, Sri Krishna is saying that your next yoni is a muda yoni. It is not on a path of progression. It's a path of regression. That is what he is actually, trying to explain here in these two shlokas. So the point is, not only here, he said in chapter 8 also, I think this is the only culture, Sanatana Dharma is the only one in which we are least worried about death. Real wisdom is something when we are not worried about death. See, if Krishna can almost get an offspring which was on the form of extinct back into life, which is what happened, why can't he actually save this Parikshit in 7 days? Parikshit could have been Brahma, Makarishi could have done a special puja and chased away the snake. The idea there that greatness of Bharat, this Srimad Bhagavatam 7 days, in 7 days what did Parikshit get? He lost his body, but he got immortality. Immortality is nothing to do with the body. It is outstretching our thought beyond this kshetra. Go beyond the kshetra and understand the kshetra jnana. So I think if we are really wise, the greatest contribution of Sanatana Dharma is death is something which will happen. Because this body itself, the other name for body is Vyadi. Body's other name is Vyadi. That's why I always say there are only 4 milestones in a Janma. Janma and then Mrityu, in between Vyadi and Jara. These are the only 4 milestones which you can measure one Janma. Don't understand it pessimistically. That is the reality. That's why in chapter 13 he said Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi, Dukkha, Dosha, Anudarshana. In one of the 20 values he said that. Don't do that. So the final moments is not to run away, it is to prepare for taking this trajectory into the next level. So we should understand it from that perspective. They are very important shlokas. We live a life and we prepare ourselves for the last moment. If that feeling comes into us, a lot of our life choices will change. It's very important for us to understand this life is a life for that last moment. That last sleep is a peaceful sleep for which we should run this life. Then some of the choices we make, some of the priorities will find its own position. Then he talks about what these 3 gunas gives us, which again comes from the definition of the gunas only. So there is a certain amount of repetition in that sense. Because Sukha and Jnana Sangani is Sangeka Nibadnaha is what Sattva's definition. So he says Karmanaha Sukrutasyahu Satvikam Nirmalam Phalam. So the Sattvic Guna, what does it gives us? It gives us Sukritaha. Satvikam Sukrita Karmanaha Sukritaha. That's what it says. And Nirmalam Phalam. It says it gives us good fruits which are all pure, arising out of actions which are all pure. That is what this Sattva will take us into. Rajasastu Phalam Dukkam Ajnanam Tamasah Phalam. See, this Dukkam is not very difficult to understand. See, the moment you invest in what is in it for me, see, once you get into the act, see, modern Western thinking, this is where they completely failed. They are teaching all the children. In this country also we are in a big way doing. We are telling them there is only one thing that can happen, which is only good things can happen. The moment you get into results oriented working in anything, the world has plus and minus. And so it is all dukkha only. In fact, even when you work for benefits, when you are not getting adequate benefits also, it leads us to dukkha. In fact, some of the earlier times I showed all those, how everything leads to dukkha only. So this is not something which is very complicated to understand. What is in it for me? In chapter 3 in great detail Sri Krishna talked about it. What is in it for me with which we do work? Work will be very tiresome. Work will make you very tired. Work will put a lot of mental stress in you. At best we can earn a lot of money and give it to Fortis or Apollo. Maximum we can do that. Too much of that actually takes us there. So we have to make a choice. As somebody was saying, if you are so rich, you can have one, you will have to die. First of all, nobody can escape dying. Maybe you can die on a golden cart. But death cannot be escaped. What we can perhaps decide is, you die on a simple mat on the floor or on a golden cart. So the effort to put into it, there is a lot of dukkha that will come out of it. Rajas activity with what is in it for me is ridden with a lot of challenges, which is what he is mentioning here. Rajasastu phalam dukkam, and this is complete ignorance. It's pitch dark, it's all avarana. The mind doesn't work, the buddhi doesn't work, it is animal-like instinct, no viveka, no vichara, nothing. So it's all ajnana, blissfully ignorant. If that is the English word we have to use, that is what tamas is all about. Tamas gives us only that kind of a effect. That is what is being implied here. Sattva sanjayate jnanam rajaso lobhaye vacha pramada moho tamasaha bhavato ajnaname vacha bhavataha ajnaname vacha. So this is just concluding it once again. He says any activity pursued with the dominance of sattva will give us knowledge. So all that in which we got superior knowledge, a greater understanding, better understanding of life, better understanding of even the management work that we are doing, that is because of only sattva. If you are only sattvic, you will get jnana. Otherwise jnana is not possible. So whether it is vyavahara or whether it is ashraya, it doesn't matter. The domain of knowledge exclusively belongs to sattvic behavior and sattvic attributes. That's what Krishna is saying. Superior understanding of oneself is the ultimate understanding, for which you need a great deal of sattva. So that's what he is saying. Sattva sanjayate jnanam rajasaha lobhaye vacha. What is in it for me? It tires you. It creates all these shat ripus. All are inevitable in this process. The whole fight in I becoming better than somebody. That's why this amanitvam, adambitvam, ahimsa, kshanti, rajam, all those are coming there. Manitva and dambitva and all will come inevitably. And that's why if you look at in chapter 2, sloka 62 and 63, Sangha Sanjayate, all that. 2 slokas. Right? Pranashyati is how it ends. You will destroy yourself at the end of the day. So all of them will become inevitable somewhere. So that is what is being implied here. Pramada and moha is miscomprehension and delusion. Complete delusion is what tamas actually leaves us with at the end of the day. So all these are repeated again and again. There is so much of repetition of these ideas, and again Sri Krishna is saying, Sattva is the only way by which you can get knowledge. You can start it as a first step. We want to say, I want to have better knowledge of the Vyavahara, for which also we need Sattvic attitude. You want, the greater Jnana, for that also you need Sattvic behavior. So without that, this knowledge will never, accumulate in a Bhakti. So that is what is very, very important for us to understand. So he says, Urdhvam gachanti sattvastaha, madhye tishtanti rajasaha, jaganya guna vrittistaha, the lowest form of guna. Jaganya guna vrittistaha, adho gachanti tamasaha. So he says, what is this trajectory? How do we go? If you are overpowered with tamas, we travel on a downward direction. So this up and down should not be understood in a physical sense. I mean, these are all we use in common parlance also. I go up means I am becoming better. That is one common understanding. When we say I go up, what we mean is I am becoming better. So urdhvam gachanti means you reach higher planes of your existence. You are closer to the goal that you need to attain finally. That is the meaning we cannot understand it in a physical sense. It's not up means you go 10 feet above or 10 feet down, nothing of that kind. But what he is saying is that Sattva Guna will only take you to this path of mumukshutva. This path of building this strong character, this path of understanding the larger goal, this getting into the right highway which takes you to the mumukshutva, all those happens only when we do, Sattva is dominant. Madhya Tishtanti means, you are still in the same, you have not elevated yourself in any capabilities. You are still there. You are again and again there. You take a Manushya Janma and then you are still in the thick of activities. It's a very slow process in which incrementally we have not added anything to the Vyaktitva in its journey towards understanding itself. That is the ultimate goal for which we are all making all this struggle. So, Madhya Tishtanti means that, and, Adaha Gachanti Tamasaha, people who have this dominant tamasic behavior, this is like a snake and ladder game. So, you throw your dice and then either you go up or you are all a few points here and there, or you take a big snake and come all the way down. That's why they play those games also. In fact, those games are all having a lot of philosophical meaning also. It was not just only a time pass. This Paramapada game that we have, snake and ladder, also conveys a lot of things for us. So it's a snake and ladder game at the end of the day. Life is a snake and ladder game. We need to know how to roll the die and have the Bhagavad Kataksha to get the right number. That we move one way or the other. So that is what is being. So this is what it is. In this whole evolution, you have stones and rocks which are at the 0th level of evolution. In fact, Swami Ramatita so beautifully says, he says, God sleeps in rocks. That's what he says. He says, God sleeps in rocks, wakes up in plants, moves around in animals, evolves in human beings. That's what Ramatita used to, in his lectures, he used to say. In other words, that is the Urdhvam Gachanti Marga. That's what it is. The lowest level of consciousness, it is not Chik Shakti, it is Jada Shakti. Then Chik Shakti comes. Slowly there is a life which comes, which is in the plant kingdom. There is consciousness, which Jagdish Chandra Bose, all these people were even saying all that 100 years back. Right? And animals which are much more conscious, because plants, barring a few plants which can indirectly do, plant kingdom cannot show their feelings, whereas animal kingdom can show their feelings. If you hurt a dog or an animal, it will show that I am getting affected. In plant kingdom, in some of them in an indirect way we see, but not in all. That's why the consciousness increases as you go down. And then your human beings, in human beings itself you can have so many subclasses. Animal-like to the godly human beings, you can put a whole set of evolution, which is what we are talking about. So the question is, where do we go? All those are related in this shloka. Actually, when I went through all these shlokas, there are a few thoughts in my mind. And this came out of a question that somebody asked me when I was teaching this earlier in a detailed fashion. The question somebody asked me was, sir, this appears to be a very dead end. I am very tamasic. I am dominantly tamasic. Where is the hope? Where is the hope to move? So this was a question, and this triggered a lot of thinking in me. So I thought about it. I see there are 4 stages in our evolution. From a guna perspective, what we understand and so on. I call stage 1 as a stage of no control. It is simple animal-like. What it means is the complexion of sattva, rajas, tamas blow their own proportion. I don't even know that such a thing exists. I don't even know which is a dominant proportion. Perhaps tamasic is the most dominant proportion. I don't even know it. It's all these pramada and moha and all that. I am all deluded. I am like animal-like. I am a very simple nothing. So, evolution would have, in this journey will start. Very little ability to modify, moderate or gain control is where we are. That's where the question comes. Now the question is, how will we move from here? Where is the hope for moving from here? Now to me it appears the greatness of God, this Prakriti and the creation, is the entire ray of hope lies in what is called sattva. Sattva is the ray of hope. And how does it play? Experience in life evokes the thinking part. Sattva's job is to create this jnana, get this jnana. That everybody has it. In people who are overly tamasic, that faculty is not at all coming, but they need a lot more experience to start opening that box. That is how I think it must really happen. Experience in life evokes thinking faculty, which is part of sattva. If you have, there is this minuscule of sattva which sparks it a little bit. As I very often say, the greatest dam in the world, tell me which is the biggest dam in the world. I will tell you it needs a hairline crack, one day it will burst. It needs a very small hairline crack. The crack is enough. Slowly the hydrostatic pressure will build, one day the dam will burst. So in our Vyaktitva, this sattva is there. It is so feeble. So that feeble sattva pops in once in a while. That is what would be the trajectory. So this leads us to occasional thinking and reflection. We all have it. We have this faculty of reflection, little bit of thinking, questioning the status quo. It all depends on the proportion. The proportion of tamas is too much, it will take much experience to get there. If the proportion of tamas is a little, the amount of experience required to get there may be a little lesser, but nobody can escape it. That's why a hairline crack is enough. The dam one day will burst. Bigger crack will burst it very fast. The hairline crack will take some more time, but the dam will burst one day. Same way, the Prakriti has given us sattva. Sattva is one of the 3. For some it is once in a while popping and popping. So that is where stage 2 is. So the hope of this evolution lies with this guna called sattva. So once we start doing it, then I believe we will go to the stage 3, which is the path to gaining handle on the gunas. That is the first step we need. First we should be able to say, there are these 3 gunas in me, it is like this. That thinking has to grow in great measure. There lies really the hope for a change, which the sattva will help us in that process. So that will happen. It is looking at alternatives, encouraging, looking at, slowly this mind will work. The sattva and the mind, once in a while, slowly, it will give us that life experiences. So looking at alternatives, exposure to ideas, all the sattva will slowly open up. That's what I think we all must have gone through in our whole journey of changing this proportion of these 3 gunas. Otherwise, where is the hope? And newer experiences out of this, leading us to understand the existence of gunas. The greatest progress we would have made is to say no, that these 3 gunas are blowing all the time. And there is a certain understanding of I have more sattva, more tamas or more rajas and all that. That understanding is Bhagavad Kataksha, Kripa. If that happens, we have covered a lot of ground in this journey. And for which the sattva, the sattvic property will help us. It will keep on popping us once in a while and so on. If that happens, then this whole idea of adjusting the complexion will happen when sattva gets more and more stronger and stronger. And that will lead us to Shravana and Manana. That's why I keep all the time saying, this class, this is the 5th year. There are 1 million things to do on a Monday between 6 and 7:30. Why are we all here? Doesn't happen by accident. I always tell my students also, it doesn't happen by accident. And there are only a few of us who choose to come here. Because that proportion is already working in a particular direction. The Shravana and Manana and Nididhyasa are all what Sattva will slowly bring into this Vyakti and help us in this process of changing. That's why Ayashankara said, Satsangatve Nissangatvam, Nissangatve Nirmohatvam, Nirmohatve Nischalatatvam, Nischalatatve Jivan Mukti. So this whole ray of hope lies in Sattva. That is why you read Puranas, you read Dharma Shastras, you read many of, if not much in the Upanishad part of it. If you read these, the emphasis on Sattva Guna, the emphasis on food practices, the emphasis on, that's what we see in chapter 17. So beautifully Krishna brings all that. Vachikam, Manasam and all that he brings. This emphasis on Sattvic is so important because there lies the ray of hope in our evolution to become that perfect individual. So that is what will be the trajectory. Otherwise, a tamasic person will be eternally condemned and there is no way you can come out. Prakriti is not like that. It has given all the three. Sattva will once in a while keep on making its impact, and that's the evolution that we are making for ourselves.
So this three gunas applies to plant kingdom and animal kingdom?
I do not know. I don't know whether sir you will be able to answer this. He is asking, will the three gunas will it apply to the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom? Definitely not for the plant kingdom. Animal kingdom also, I do not know whether the three gunas will apply. Applicable to the animal kingdom. How about plant kingdom?
Because I remember reading somewhere to choose a statue in a stone, they go, Brahmacharya said go for a sattvic stone.
Oh, I see, that way. No, my own understanding is the three gunas are part of every creature of Prakriti.
How dominant or how...
No. First of all, the three gunas are, because they are Prakriti's guna sambhavan. So, as long as Prakriti is there, Prakriti is what the whole world is. So, everything has the three gunas. The only difference is, as this evolution which I showed, the question is there a possibility to change?
For them to change, yeah.
Is there a possibility to change? Can you go to the previous slide?
Last
Exactly. It is, so all of them are gunas. Actually, I think I should change all of them are gunas. Anything which is Prakriti has gunas.
Consciousness is dimly expressed.
Yes. It is the ability to recognize it, ability to change it is the domain of only human beings. It's not even in the other kingdom.
Animal life, more awareness.
That's all.
Got it.
So stones
Sir,
also has.
one more question.
Mixture is different.
Yes. And inability to change the complexion. That's the most important thing. That it's not a chip shakti, it's a jada shakti.
No, the point I wanted to make was, in the process, is it only the concentration on self-evolution, or is it look at the fellow human beings or the society around you, and also be bothered or start thinking about that, or is it also a continuous process where both the things are together involved?
No, I think both of them are involved. The Sattvic guna will inevitably embrace Loka Sangraha than Sangarsha. They are all part of this. So, the moment we say, we step out of what is in it for me, then I versus the rest boundary will disappear, no? That's why if you remember, once I actually showed long back 4 concentric circles. Ramatita is a professor of mathematics. So he said, so that is what it is. A Sattvic guna,
Infinite.
A Sattvic guna will make a circle with infinite radius, which is a line. But then more than the shape, infinite will become a tangent. More than the shape, as long as there is curvature, that means you cover only a certain domain. Moment it becomes a line, everything is opened up. So he uses mathematics to explain it. So I think they are part of the Sattvic.
That means apart from self-evolution, the togetherness also goes.
No, the self-evolution is defined in your ability to embrace the togetherness also. Very definition of self-evolution.
Vrishti and samasti.
Will embrace that also. That's why that Mukta Sangha Samachara is very important. What is in it for me if we graduate to a very different plane. That's why I say karma, chitta shuddhyatam karma. navastu upalabhyate. This attitude will bring us to that plane. The definition, all that are sattvic. So, in summary of the next shloka, set of shlokas, sattva is a light of intelligence shining everywhere. We go up, in the sense we evolve. We are in a trajectory of better, being better. Urdhvam gachanti. That's what the word, purity, feeling of goodness in the heart and so on. In the case of Rajas, the 6 ripus will overwhelm us. Lobha is only, Lobhadaya we have to understand. Lobha is just a reference phrase. Because in a meter you have constraints of akshara. That's why all these texts you have to read and understand very, very carefully. Lobha doesn't mean just Lobha there. Lobha has to be used because there are only 8 aksharas you can put in an anushtup, so you are constrained by, all those rules. Basically it talks about all the 6 ripus.
Full package.
Yes, it's a full package represented by just one word there. 6 ripus overwhelm us and drive our day-to-day decisions. We remain in the same plane, meaning we have not really made a progress. Very incrementally we have moved here and there because Manikva and Dambitva, all those are the domain of Rajas. All that will be there. Pain, mental stress, heartburn. Tamas, inertness, dullness and delusion. Pramada and moha and all that. We go down, retrograde in our journey to salvation, and more of ignorance. So Krishna has put all these properties in this chapter, and so up to this 18th shloka, he has discussed in great detail what is this sattva, what is this rajas, what is this tamas, why is it important, how this whole trajectory of one janma to another janma to another janma, everything is linked with these shlokas. Then he brings 2 very interesting shlokas in which he brought. So up till now, the feeling that we get is the goal of our life is to get sattva. More and more sattva. So far our understanding has been like that. See, Krishna wants to just take you out of that understanding also. The chapter ends with some set of beautiful shlokas where he points to Gunatita bhava. That is where he really takes us. So next 2 shlokas, I am only taking 1 shloka out of the 2. He says, Gunenetan atitya trin dehi deha samudbhavan janma mrityu jara dukkaihi vimuktaha amritam ashnute. So now so far he talked about sattva, rajas and tamas. Now finally he says, amritatvam, when do you reach amritatva? When do you consume that nectar of amritatva? Only you will become a gunatita. Now why do you have to become gunatita? That is the gum which has to dry. Then Purusha will say, I will not get stuck with Prakriti anymore. That should not happen. So far he talked about the importance of sattva being a much better of the 3 by talking good things about sattva. And he ends this discussion with a couple of shlokas. I just took 1 shloka out of it, where he is saying, your salvation and mumukshutva will happen when you transcend the 3 gunas. That is what he is saying. Etan atitya, 3 gunan, etan 3 gunan atitya, having crossed or stepped beyond the, which means the 3 gunas will exist as long as Prakriti exists. The question that you asked. So you have to step beyond the 3 gunas, then you can reach that mortality, immortality that we are talking about. So that's what he is saying here. So this is what, the Chinmaya's parable. So Chinmaya says, as long as you are in a moving train, all effects of movements are there. You step out of the train, the effects of movement is gone, which means guna will be there. You don't get yourself, guna will be there in the Prakriti. As long as kshetra is there, guna, vikaramsha gunamschaiva. That's the definition of Prakriti. As long as Prakriti is there, it will have vikara and guna. The question is whether you want to come under the influence or you want to step out of the influence. So he is now talking about stepping out of the influence. That is what he is talking about. So just to put, my understanding is in this chapter, Krishna is giving a two-step process. All these, we cannot become Gunatita tomorrow. That is not possible. So he is now talking about 2 steps in these 20 shlokas. What has he said? First of all, there is tamas, rajas and sattva. It is there always. So what he is saying is, so far this is what he said. If you move towards sattva, that means we are moving towards knowledge, goodness, higher things are dear to the heart, much evolved thinking, subtle aspects to life, leading us towards what is we will see as Devi Sampat. He is going to talk in great detail in chapter 16 on that. So far he has said there are a set of things you can move. If you are in the plane of Rajas, you are in the bedrock of activities. You are in the world of activities, putting and taking and expecting results, getting upset, results are not happening. Overjoicing when you get results, both ways people land in the hospital. Overjoicing also sometimes they land in the hospital because they drink out of bounds and then their intestine is gone. So somebody has to repair it in the hospital, they also happens that way. So it's all source of all those reports. So this is one plane. Or this is the other extreme, which is simple animal instinct. I am not excited over anything, no desire to learn things. I simply eat and sleep and eat and sleep, and generally my ancestors have left a lot of money. I will enjoy life at a very animal level. So there the tamasic character is driving predominantly. So it is all animal instincts drives everything. Not much need for thinking faculty. Losing power of discrimination. Nitya, Anitya, Vastu, Vichara, Buddhi, Viveka, nothing. Both save all of them, don't use it. If there is a way you can put it in a locker, put it in a locker. We don't need it. That is the feeling here. Gross aspects to life. You are not looking at subtle aspects. In fact, my biggest worry is a lot of Western thinking which are all pushed here are all heading us towards that. Saying that all that you have to do is feed indriyartaha, for the indriyas. Just put all gadgets and then keep feeding for the eyes and the ears and all that, and then once in a while keep eating all kinds of foods and so on. This is the paradigm in which we are moving. That is actually will take us more into tamasic. I keep saying this, I will tell the 100th time or 200th time, we cannot compete with animals in sensual pleasures. Impossible. We will lose heavily. Animal sensual pleasure ability is very heavy. There is a meter with which you can measure. You put a kg of food in front of an animal and make it eat. Immense people will put some meter and then measure, some needle will go here and there. You measure that. Even when you are very hungry, you eat, your meter will be nowhere near these animals. So we are trying to compete with animals today. With all these gadgets and external things and all kinds of things that will take us there.
True words are there. That is Jivakaya Pravritti. Jivakaya
Pravritti. Jivakaya
Pravritti is Atmakaya
Pravritti. Satyam. So that will pull us towards tamasic behavior. Or one can move here. So far Sri Krishna has been implicitly giving us. He never said have more and more of sattva. But by putting all these, if there is a little bit of intelligence in our mind, we will come to a conclusion it is better we increase the proportion of sattva rather than all these. While all three will remain, is there a way we can increase the proportion of sattva is what a conclusion we might have come by all these discussions that he has given. Now while we are trying to strengthen that discussion, he now brings one more discussion. He says, no, you have to go beyond this counting of these three gunas itself. So that is what he is saying. That's what the 20th sloka is. And all these are already there in the previous chapters. That's why I wanted to bring all these. These we have already seen. He says, Traigunya Vishaya Vedaha Nistraigunyo Bhavajana. This go beyond this domain of the three gunas is what he said in chapter 2. In chapter 3, slokas 27 to 35. They are all only about guna and prakriti and all that. I have brought 2 slokas from there. Prakritehe kriyamanani gunaihi karmani sarvashah ahankara vimudatma kartahamiti manyate. So as long as we think we have to attach ourselves with the guna, ahankara will come. If you say, let guna, as long as guna is part of prakriti, let it do things and I will be there. So that is what people like Ramana Maharishi are doing. When so much was happening to him, the ailment and so on, he said, this is prakriti visesha. What has to go, it has to go. So when they did the operation, he said, no anesthesia. He was at that level. And he said, why? He said, pain is there. Pain nobody can run away from, because pain is a Prakriti Visesha. If you have to cut this, the blood has to come here, it is a Prakriti Visesha. And it has to burn. That you cannot change. But suffering is in your hands. Pain is different from sufferings. So Ramana Maharshi says, suffering is in your hands, pain is not in your hands, pain is part of Prakriti. So that is the Gunatita Bhava. That it is property is to do something, let it do, that level. In fact, when he went from Madurai to, Tiruvannamalai, he was in a Patala Linga. After 21 days, people went in and saw there were lizards and all kinds of things on this boy. They pulled him out of that. He was in Samadhi. That's how Ramana Maharshi was located. In fact, there are some Swamijis who are actually making money out of this boy. They said, there is a person here, if you give me some money, I will, that kind of thing they did. So, these are living, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa was like that. Those are people who have demonstrated what is called Gunatita Bhava. So, Krishna is asking us, move there. And in order to move there, it is very understandable from the logic of the flow of shlokas. To go to a stage of Gunatita Bhava, you have to first increase the proportion of Sattva. The Sattva is the embodiment of knowledge. It itself will say, get out of me. It will bootstrap itself. It will say that, because the Jnana domain is Sattva. So you increase the proportion of Sattva, it will first increase and then it will give us a situation where we need to step out of the influence of the Gunas. Gunas exist. It's a question of getting out of the influence of the Gunas. That's what we found. Tattva Vittu Mahabhagaya Guna Karma Vibhagayoho Guna Guneshu Vartante. What a beautiful shloka. Guna Guneshu Vartante iti matva na sajjate. That's what Ramana Maharshi and Ramakrishna Paramahamsa are living. They were living examples of this shloka. They know this world of karma and guna and all are part of Prakriti. Let things happen. In fact, the next shloka he says, Udasi Tavate Asina. There's a nice shloka here. That's what he is going to say, the same idea. So after all that, obviously Arjuna is a little confused because so far he is saying very good about Sattva. But then the last two shlokas, he shifted his thinking elsewhere, saying all these are fine, but if you want to really become the perfect human being, you have to step beyond the three influence of gunas. So the chapter ends with three questions which Arjuna asked, for which Krishna answered some very nice ways, by which this Gunatita Bhava is the ultimate pinnacle of understanding the guna and all that. So that's where the question comes. Arjuna Uvacha Kaihi Liggaihi Strin Gunan Etan Atito Bhavati Prabho. So now you said you have to step beyond these three gunas. What are the signs of stepping these three gunas? Tell me, what are the lingas? How do I know I have really gone beyond the influence of three gunas? Is what he is asking. Kaihi Lingaihi Trin Gunan Etan Atitaha Bhavati Prabho. Kim Acharaha. So in order to do that, how do I behave? What kind of achara vichara you must have? That's the second question he asked. Then he says, Katam cha etan stri gunan ativartate. So how do you recognize a person who has crossed? That's the first question. How do I know somebody has crossed the influence of three gunas? And in order to do it, what kind of achara and how actually this happens? That kind of a question. So three questions Arjuna asked, and it clearly comes because 18 shlokas talks about Sattva, Rajas and Tamas, and 2 shlokas suddenly says you go beyond the 3 gunas. That is stage 2. In fact, the greatness of Bhagavad Gita, in fact, look at chapter 3, look at chapter 5, look at chapter 18 again. This Arjuna is very smart. He uses different words, but he wants to say, give me sannyasa, I will run away. The questions, the words he uses are all different. In one he uses tyaga, somewhere he says karma and karma sannyasa, his play of words. And the greatness of Bhagavad Gita is, it did not point to the ultimate. The greatest discussion is the process through which we go. That's why in this chapter, the greatest discussion is about adjusting the proportion of three gunas. That's the most important thing. Once that happens, the last 2 shlokas is enough, because automatically it will happen. That's why he did not talk about that, sannyasa, because the entire chapter 5 when he asked, should I do karma or sannyasa, he simply brushed aside the question. He says, karma Karma visishyate karma sannyasat, and then he went on talking about karma. Because you purify your mind, purify yourself through karma. That's why Bhagavad Gita is for us. For us who are all in struggling with so many things, see, when I want to climb Everest, don't give me the signboard of the last 500 meters in this 11,000 meters peak that I have to climb. That you don't give. You give me the first 3 steps, after that I will find it. No point in giving that final 500 meters, how to go, you have to do this. It makes no sense standing at the base camp. We want the first 4 steps. Do we go right or left, and what are all the precautions? This text is like that. So even in this chapter, 18 shlokas talk only about the 3 gunas. Because that is where we have to substantively invest our efforts. Rest will come. That's why he brushed aside the rest with just 2 shlokas. Still having asked, he gives some answers. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Prakashancha Pravrittimcha Mohamevacha Pandava Nadveshti Sampravrittani Nanivrittani Kankshati. Look at the shloka. He says these are Prakasham, Pravritti and Moha are direct indicators for Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. That's what we saw again and again. So by putting these 3, he's saying whether Sattva exists, Raja exists or Tama exists, which means he recognizes that will exist because Prakriti. These are all Prakriti Visesha. When that exists, he says Nadveshti. In other words, that's why I am saying to say, we all start like this. I want to be very detached in life. I want to be very detached in life is a very inferior first step in this journey. The real final step is I don't let anything happen, it doesn't bother me. That's a different statement. But in order to reach that, we have to develop these feelings first. So to say, I want to be detached from worldly things is only a starting point. The true Gunatita neither says I will run away from worldly things, nor he says I want everything. He says that presence and absence will not do anything to me. Whether you do a surgery on my body or don't do a surgery on my body, Ramana Maharishi says nothing will happen. That's a very different state. That's not a state of forcibly avoiding something and doing only, this is how we start. We may start like that, but that is not the ultimate goal. Ultimate goal is none of them can affect me. That is the ultimate goal. That's why he says, Nadveshti, the existence of these 3, which is Sattva, Rajas and Tamas, Nadveshti Sampravrittani, too much of this happening, so therefore I am very upset. None of them is happening, all of them has gone out of it, I am aspiring for that stage, all those will go. You don't even take recognition of it. Not taking a recognition of it is very different from saying I want only this and not that. Just to give you an example, there are a lot of people say I want to avoid, reach a stage where I want to, therefore they say from tomorrow at any cost I will not use mobile. I will not do. That's not the way. That's a very inferior way. That may be a way to start. The point is to say, if there is a mobile, use it. If it is not there, forget it. Keep on going. Nothing happens to you. Reaching that stage. Sampravrittani na dveshti, nivrittani na kankshati. So there is neither this domain of expectation or a domain of disappointment. Oh, there's more of this happening, less. All these goes out of the mind map. So these are all mind map. Reality is there in the world of Vyavahara, but it doesn't map to the mind. That's why Ramana Maharishi said, pain cannot be avoided, suffering can be avoided. Suffering is a state of mind. Pain is a state of Pravritti Lakshana. That is a subject of physics. It's a Bhuta Shastra. You can't do anything about it. There are some properties which will happen. That is the definition he gives. Can he step out of these differences and differences cease to map onto my mind? While differences may exist, it will not map onto my mind. Can we go to that level? Udasinavat asina. He develops a sense of udasina, which means udasina means it doesn't. I don't even take cognizance of presence or absence of it. Either ways, it doesn't affect me. That is the real udasina bhava. Udasina bhava means if it is there, I use it. If it is not there, it's all right. That cannot do anything to me. That is the real udasinavatasina gunaihi yo navichalyate. So this guna cannot influence me too much. That is the real spirit of detachment. Detachment, for many people, detachment is a force of hatred saying I won't use it. That is not detachment, that is a negative force of hatred. Detachment means, I will be there. It is there or not there, it doesn't make any difference to me. That level is the true meaning of detachment, and that's what he says. Gunaihi yaha na vichalyate gunavartante ityeva yo avatishtanti nengate. So, just because gunas are there, it will affect me, none of those feelings. Everything is, such a feeling is not there. The mind is blind, neutral to everything related to guna. Whatever guna exists, don't exist, because of guna something happened, because of this guna triggering something happened, because of this guna something, they are out of. So such people may work like that. That is a way they may work, but then it's not mapping onto the mind. So it doesn't create the vasana, which is very, very important. Vasana kshaya is the most important thing, so this will really do that. Then there are two shlokas which I use in all my lectures, in all my CEO, because this is what I see in every office today. What Krishna has beautifully has put some very good examples here. He has given some examples. See here, Samadukka Sukaswastaha Samaloshta Shmakanchanaha Tulya Priya Priyodiraha Tulya Nindatma Samstutihi Mana Apamanayos Tulyaha Tulya Mitrari Pakshayoho Sarvaramba Parityagi Gunatita Sauchyati. There are 6 examples he has given. Every office in Pravrti, I see the antithesis of this. In my 25 years, 30 years, I have seen this all the time. Sukha, Dukkha, Dukkha, Sukha, Swastha, we already, from chapter 2, 14 shloka, we have seen this, so let us not go to it again and again. Can you treat Sukha and Dukkha with the same level of, that's what it is. Sama, Loshta, Ashma and Kanchana. A clay, a stone or a gold. It should not make a difference to you. No difference you should make. In other words, something is more valuable, something is less valuable. If some person gets affected by that, I used to even to tell how can you be a great leader and you can be a good manager. If somebody don't have this samatva, they are bound to make mistakes because they are affected by the intrinsic value of something that they are seeing. They will cease to be a great person. The guna is affecting them. So that is the second example he gives. And the third example, Tulya. Tulya is equal. That's why this word Tola comes. Tulya is equal. Tulya, Priya, Apriyo, Dhira. He says those people are Dhiras. See, Dhiras, as I have been saying again in the past, Dhira is not a very courageous or a valorous person. That is one meaning. Dhira actually means one who is able to use his buddhi. The vichara is able to use his power of discrimination very well. He is a Dhira. So who is a Dhira here? Tulya, Priya, Apriya. I like him, I don't like him. If people start behaving like that, they are very low level. Whether you like him or not like him, can you be able to handle things in a very objective way? So that's why he says Tulya, Priya, Apriya, Dhira. Then he says Tulya, Ninda, Atma, Samstuti. In fact, biggest problem with this entire management and companies all over the world is the boss cannot listen to the subordinate telling something which he doesn't like. This is the bane of leadership. Ninda Atma Samstutihi. And what's the other way? Some people go and put so much of maska on this person, you are Indra and Chandra, and get things out of him. This is the other extreme. So there is Atma Samstuti. And if Ninda, if you are not able to take, you have to get a consultant who will tell the same thing and take a lot of money and go. That is what happens in organizations. Now, I am talking in a very materialist sense, but what Krishna is talking here is in a spiritual sense. What I am saying is there is so much of balance. Life is all about, spiritual growth is all about balance. Spiritual growth is all about homeostatism of the psychological order. See, we are all physically homeostatic. We are all warm-blooded. The moment the temperature changes outside, things will change. Here Krishna is talking about psychological homeostasis. When outside conditions change, can you be, away from all that? That is the real science of Gunatita. Here are all examples of Gunatita. So he says, Tulya, Ninda, Atma, Samstutihi, Mana, Apamanayos, Tulya. A lot of people cannot take it. You need Amanitva. That's what he said in chapter 13. People cannot take Mana and Apamana same. When good things happen, they jump up and down, and bad things happen, they go for a psychological something. Both are signs of you are nowhere in this, you are under the total sway of gunas. That's the meaning. Whereas if you are able to develop it, gunas, you have kept them at bay. That is the meaning of it. He says, mana apamanayos tulyaha tulya mitra aripakshayo. So I have seen these meetings in all these companies. You know what really happens? Moment somebody makes a statement, you have to first find out whether it belongs to my camp or opposite camp. Only then I can understand it. Otherwise there is no way I can understand. These are people at the lowest level of guna. What you say, in order to understand, first I have to ask whether he belongs to my camp or the opposite camp. The meaning itself will change. That's what Krishna is saying. Mitra Paksha and Aripaksha. It's a word he uses, Mitra Aripakshayo. The point he is making is all these world of dualities are, whenever we are so much affected by this. So what is sum and substance of this shloka? Whenever we are affected by the world of dualities, that means we are under the sway of the gunas. Whenever we are able to slowly come out of it and say, while the world of dualities exists, still in fact there is a 38th shloka in chapter 2. Samadukke suke kritva labha labho jaya jayo tato yuddhaya yujyasva naivam papam avapsya. It says the same thing. Because there are three pairs of opposite that he talks about. He says, Sama Sukha Dukkha, Sukha Dukkha is one pair of opposite, Labha and Alabha is second pair of opposite, Jaya and Ajaya is third pair of opposite. Then Tato Yuddha Yujyasva. But I say there is a grand management principle here. Yuddha is activity. Outcome, every activity has an outcome, that is called Jaya and Ajaya. Every outcome must be assessed. Only then you know, that is called Labha and Alabha. Only after assessment feelings will come, which is called Sukha and Dukkha. So this is a framework. Every activity will throw outcome. Every outcome must be assessed using some performance measure. Out of every assessment you will get feeling. So Krishna in that chapter said that you develop equanimity in all these three levels. You are a Gunatita. He didn't use the word Gunatita. Here the same ideas are coming. So Gunatita is one who is able to transcend beyond the world of duality. Samadukka sukha swastaha samaloshkashma kanchana. That's what he says here. One more and then we will close the chapter. Mamchayo avyabicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samati tietan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. So finally he gives this verdict that you will reach me, you will reach the ultimate state of Brahmahood only when you are able to go beyond the Gunatita bhavitavyam. You have to go beyond the domain of the gunas, the influence of the gunas. So that's what he says. He says, Avyabhicharena Bhakti Yogena, which he has said in chapter 7 to 13, again and again it has come. It's a link there. And you bring the Bhakti, unwavering Bhakti. Then he says, Gunaha samyak atitan, etan gunan samyak atitan. You are able to transcend beyond the sway of the gunas. You bring these two parameters, you will reach immortality. So the whole chapter started by introducing the three gunas and gave us a vivid description of why sattva is important, and quickly moved us to that, showed us the final destination in this journey, which is you have become Gunatita. So by logic what we understand is, let's work on increasing the proportion of sattva. That will tell us how to become Gunatita. Let us get this RGB called SRT, Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. Let us improve the quantum of sattva. That will, with Bhagavad, that's why Bhakti and all that will take us to that state of Gunatita. That is what will take us to the state of perfection. In other words, if people become Gunatita, the gum is dried. And the gum is dried, Purusha will not stick with the Prakriti. It will go away. Which is what that shloka is saying. Karanam guna sambhava asya sat asad yoni janmasu. So that guna, if you become Gunatita, that gum will dry. So that is what is the connection to that shloka. So that is what this chapter is. Now since guna is so important, and so finally look at what is happening in the third triplet of Bhagavad Gita. He has reduced this whole journey to salvation to a problem of adjusting your guna and becoming Gunatita. That That is why rest of the chapters, you take Daivi Sampat and Asuri Sampat, you take Shraddha Traya Vibhaga Yoga, a good chunk of chapter 18 is all about Trigunas. This is really a workable idea for us. That is why in this Samskriti, in this culture, there is so much emphasis that become sattvic. Because finally, our ability to get this mokshitva, get this moksha, is a function of our ability to adjust the guna, which comes so nicely in Bhagavad Gita. It's starting from this chapter. We will see it in chapter 16, 17, 18, a lot of these ideas again and again. I think there lies our ability to go forward. There's no point in knowing all these and then leaving it at one side. I think we have, that's why he says what kind of eating, how do you talk, how do you give people, everything is brought up. He wants us to think only about gunas. Our journey is all about gunas. If we cannot adjust our gunas, there is no hope for this spiritual evolution. That is the dominant message in the third triplet of Bhagavad Gita. So he ends with the last shloka here. Brahmano hi pratishtaham amritasya vyayasya cha shashvatasya cha dharmasya sukasya ekantikasya cha. Nice definition of this ultimate, that Brahmanhood. What is Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpade? What does it mean? It says, Anadi, Ananta, Avyaya, Nitya, Shuddha, Bhukta, Mukta, Satchidananda, all those are defined in a way. We have seen similar descriptions in the earlier part also. So I will not have to go again on that. So with this, the chapter ends. Om Tassaditi, Srimad Bhagavad Gita, so Upanishadsu, Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre, Sri Krishna Arjuna Samvade, Gunatre Vibhaga Yogo Nama, Chaturdashodhyaya. So next week we'll see the Purushottama Yoga, which is the 15th chapter. Yeah.
So this is regarding this dominance of the guna dominance, right? 10th shloka. So
18 shlokas.
18?
Shloka 1 to 18 is all about, of course, the
yeah. So the dominance, is it only about time? Like I was thinking of an example, like if somebody is doing all things right all the time, but suddenly you kill somebody. For that moment, and then everything could reverse. Like, see, if we see the example of say Ravana in Ramayana, I guess he was a very good king. He was very knowledgeable, and only one act supposedly.
No, it is not one act. In Daivasri Sampath, we will see there are some very good shlokas. See, if you read all these Rakshasas and Asuras and so on, their life has two components. First of all, please understand, if you want to excel anything, you want to excel to be, in the job that you do, you want to excel in your spiritual pursuit. If you want to excel, you need tapas. Tapas is the ultimate way. So if somebody has to do murder, he must do tapas. No, really, it is the distilled way of knowing what to do. So if you read all these Puranas, they have two parts. All these Asuras story, if you read, I am going to actually bring it. There are 6 stages in which they perished. I have thought about it. But the first part is they acquire a lot of energy, tapas, the true tapas. Then they spend it on wrong domain. That's why in Ramayana, in fact, these lectures in Ramayana by this Srinivasa Shastri, there is a chapter called Goodness versus Greatness. Beautiful chapter. He analyzes the character Rama and Ravana. He says, Ravana was as great as Rama. Greatness is different, goodness is different. Ravana is great, why? Because the kind of things in Valmiki you should read, they are put on the same pedestal in terms of some of their, certain descriptions.
Sundarakanda Anjaneya Yata.
Yes. In fact, in the 49th Sarga, first time, Hanuman sees directly Ravana. Until then he has seen only in hidden and so on. That's a very short Sarga. There are only 40 shlokas or maybe 30 shlokas. He says, Aho Dairyam Aho, that's how it starts. He says, Aho Rupam Aho Dairyam. What a great personality. And finally he says, if only he had a quantum of dharma, the 3 lokas will be under him. Indra and all everybody will be under his sway. Is what Hanuman makes observation there. So they are inherently actually Rajasic. They are not at all Sattvic. Don't take that conclusion. We'll see it in a little detail when we see Daivasri Sampath. Thank you.
आपका बात हो गया उससे?
तो